So here we have example 1. So I think you should write these down so that you have the example and you can see what I'm doing. So example 1, using properties to write equivalent expressions. So we're going to simplify the expression by moving things around, changing the associations. But we're going to state each time we do something what we've done. So if I look at this first problem, I have r plus 3. I have those two associated together, plus 6. So I can't really add r and 3, so I need to change the way I have things. So I'm going to change their order. So when I change the order of something, I am going to use the commutative property. So I think about commuting, I'm moving around, so I'm going to use commutative property, which says in addition, I can change the order of things. So I'm going to move my 6. I'm going to say 6 plus 3 plus r. And then I'm also going to change the associations. So I'm going to use associative property. And I'm just going to associate my two numbers together by putting parentheses. So now I can actually simplify the expression because I have my numbers together, my variable by itself. So now I have 9 plus r. So when you get to some problems, that's what they want you to do. They want you to write down the properties that you're using and then simplify it. Notice we're not solving. We're not saying something equals anything. We're just simplifying. So again, if you need to hear something again, you can rewind. If you need to pause the video to write things down, go ahead and pause the video. So I'm going to give you some more examples. Again, if you want to look in your textbook, the textbook will have similar ideas but different examples using different numbers. If you want to look in your textbook, you can look at page 128 in your textbooks for some other examples to support this. Here's another example. So you don't have to rewrite the title down again. You can just write example B. So the way I have things associated is kind of strange. I think the order is fine, so we don't need to use commutative property. Here I think we just need to change the associations. So I'm going to use associative property. And I probably should add that it's associative property of multiplication because that's what I'm using. So I'm just going to change this and I'm going to associate my 3 and my 4. Notice we can use a dot to represent multiplication. We can use parentheses. So now I've changed the way I have them associated. So my final answer, if I want to simplify it, is 12n. Again, you can look in your textbook, page 128, if you want some similar examples, but I'm going to give you a couple more to help with your understanding. Okay, so here again I have some numbers, but they're not next to each other, so I first probably should move them around. So I'm going to use a commutative property. So commutative, I'm just going to abbreviate that commutative property, prop, of addition. So I'm going to move things around. So I'm going to say 3.5 plus 1.5 plus x. And I want to make sure that I do this addition first, so I'm going to associate those. So I'm going to use the associative property, a property of addition, to associate my 3.15 with my 1.5, so that I make sure I do that first, plus my x. So that should make the math easier, except I changed my numbers, didn't I? That should be 3.5, and this should be 3.5. Sorry about that. So 3.5 plus 1.5 gives me 5. Okay, so here's our last example, and now I'm going to use some fractions. So again, I probably want to change their order so that I can put my fractions together and leave my variable out on the end. So because I've moved them, that's the commutative property. I'm commuting them, and that's of addition. And then I want to change or make sure that I add my fractions together first, so I'm going to associate them. make them friends, associations. So we do that. So that's associative property of addition. And we add those two together. So I get 3/4 plus 1/4 is 4/4, which is 1 plus x. Okay, so now you're going to try some on your own. So you're going to go ahead and write down this question in your notebook. You're going to simplify it. You're going to explain each step like I just did. And then you're going to see a text box on the right. So you could probably just give me a final answer, but tomorrow in your notebook, I should see each step. So in the text box on the right, I want you just to give me the final answer, but in your notebook, I need to see every step of the way. So you have A, you have B, so notice you have fractions. You're probably going to have to get common denominators to add those two together. So again, if you need to, you pause the video. If you need to rewind something, you can rewind something. If you need to use your textbook as a reference, please go to page 128. You have C to do. Don't forget to explain each step. I'm going to be looking in your notebooks tomorrow to make sure that that's what you have done. Okay, so now we have another property. So you're going to pause your video. You're going to write all this down, and then you're going to play the video to hear what I have to say. So first pause it and write. So in your notebook, you should have written the additional property of 0. So what that means is the sum of any number and 0. When I add 0 to anything, I'm always going to get that same number. If I add 10 plus 0, I'm still going to have 10. If I add 1,000 plus 0, I still get 1,000. So 0 plus anything is still that anything. So go ahead and write this down. So pause the video, write it down, and then listen when you're ready to listen. So now we have the multiplication property of 0 and of 1. So the product of any number and 0 is always 0. So my 10 times 0 is still 0. And my 1,000 times 0 is still 0. But the product of any number and 1 is always that number. So this is just different. This is the multiplication properties of 0 and 1. So 1,000 times 1 is still 1,000. So go ahead, write those down. We're going to use those in a minute. Okay, so let's try the other technique here. Do not copy this down. Just listen and watch what I do. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did in example 1, except now I'm using properties of 0. So I probably need to move my numbers around a little bit so that I get them in a better order. So that's the commutative property. So I'm going to commute them. And then I'm going to do the associative property to change them. So 0 plus 4 plus s. I guess I didn't really need to move them because I could have just changed their associations. So 0 plus any number is still that number. So I get 4 plus s. So 0 plus any number, so that is the 0 property of addition. Okay, so make sure you're writing down the properties that you use. Okay, so here I have another one. This is a number 1, not an I. So I'm just going to use associative property because I want to make this easier. So I'm going to use associative property of multiplication to change my associations. So 2, and then I'm going to do k times 1, and anything times 1, so that's the multiplicative or multiplication property, it's easier to spell, property of 1. Anything times 1 is still itself, so I get 2k as my final answer. Okay, now I have a word problem. Do not copy this down, just look at what I do. So use the same techniques that I used in the last video. So here's my word problem. So you hand out 425 programs. I'm going to underline that. On the first night of your school's variety show. P programs on the second night and 520 programs on the third night. Write an expression for the total number of programs you handed out. Then simplify. So I know the first night I handed out 425. The second night, I don't know how many I handed out, so that's P. And the third night, I handed out 520. So now I just need to rearrange the order that I have these. And so remember, that's a commutative property of addition, which is a positive sign for addition. So I'm just going to change the order. And then I'm going to use my associative property to associate my numbers together. So associative property. And I know my handwriting's really bad, but you can also look at similar examples if you want to on page 129 in your textbook. So now if I add these two together, I get 945 plus P. So I used the commutative property of addition, and I used the associative property of addition. So I simplified the expression as well as stating what I was doing. So now you're going to try some on your own. So again, you should see the text box on the right. So I couldn't add the little dots, so my little stars are my multiplication. So you want to simplify and explain each step. So again, just give me a final answer in the text box on the right. But your notebook should explain each step that you have done along the way. So you have D, E, F, and then everybody's favorite, a word problem. So if you could, in the text box on the right, write the expression for the total amount that you have paid. So that's what I should see in the text box on the right. But you should, in your notebook, be explaining every step along the way. Okay, so that's it for the video lesson. I don't expect you to know and understand everything perfectly. This was just an introduction to the material. We're going to go over it all again tomorrow during class when we practice some more problems. So don't stress out. Just write it all down. Make sure it's all in your notebook. If you have questions, please go ahead and write those down in your notebook or star or highlight things so that we can see what we need to go over. Remember, we're just trying this. We're not perfect at it yet. So go ahead, write this all in your notebooks, and I'll see you all tomorrow for class.